Hi, welcome back everyone. Today in Level F, we're going to be going over lessons 89 through 92, and you'll need the practice sheets 7 and 8, worksheets 71 through 73, the fraction chart, appendix page 3, which is the multiplication table, the math card games book, your fraction cards deck, and your basic number cards deck. In lesson 89, we will add mixed numbers and simplify the sum. Have your child complete the first section of practice sheet 7 for the warm-up. Notice that this time the fraction will be multiplied by the number in the circle. So I think it was last lesson that the circle indicated that the fraction was going to be divided by that number. It doesn't really matter whether it's used to divide or multiply. What it really is intended to do is to just point out the multiple that the child is going to be using. If your child is having issues with simplifying the improper fractions, remind him or her to look at the fraction chart to see what makes a whole and then how many are left over. Let's take a look at that.
Okay, for example, let's look at the fraction 6/5. So how many fifths make a whole? So we can look right here and see that 5/5 make a whole. And then how many fifths are left over? That would be this one right here. So our simplified number is 1 and 1/5. Next, you'll be adding mixed numbers. So let's take a look at that. So if we have this problem 1 and 4/5 plus 2 and 3/5, we can simply add the whole numbers. So that's 1 plus 2 equals 3. And then we can add, and you wouldn't have to write this down. I'm just writing it down so that you can see what I'm talking about. And then we can add the fractions, which is 7/5, which is also 1 and 2/5. So 3 plus 1 and 2/5 equals 4 and 2/5. So my answer is 4 and 2/5. This is one way for your child to do this problem.
Okay, now you can have your child complete the worksheet, which is worksheet 71 from the last lesson. Remember, we only did part of it. And then you can play equivalent fractions, which is F24 in the math card games book, and ask the in conclusion questions. In lesson 90, we will be subtracting mixed numbers and simplifying the difference. The warm-up questions are on practice sheet 7, and after those are done, we will look at subtracting fractions. So let's take a look at the second problem in the lesson book on page 178.
Okay, so for this first problem, 3 and 7/8 minus 1 and 5/8, it's pretty straightforward. We can do it very similarly to the addition problem that we did the last lesson. 3 minus 1 is 2, and 7/8 minus 5/8 is 2/8. It can be simplified to 2 and 1/4. We will now be moving on to a little bit harder of a problem. If you notice, the 3/5 over here is larger than the 2/5. So we're going to have to do some trading. So 4 and 2/5 could be written as 3 and 7/5. So I just traded that one whole for 5/5 and added it to the 2/5. So I have 3 and 7/5 minus 1 and 3/5. And then we can do the subtraction just like normal. So 3 minus 1 is 2, 7 minus 3 is 4. So we have 2 and 4/5. Okay, so now I'd like you to look at the information section on worksheet 72. We're going to be going over 4 ways to subtract fractions. So the first problem, the first method is called finding the missing addend. So we have this problem 4 and 2/5 minus 1 and 3/5. Okay. And we're going to be going up from 1 and 3/5 to get to 4 and 2/5. So 1 and 3/5 plus 2/5 would equal 2, because 3/5 and 2/5 is 1, and 1 and 1 is 2, right? So now we're at 2, and we want to go from 2 to 4. And then we want to go from 4 to 4 and 2/5. So if we add up everything that we added here, we get 2/5 plus 2 and 2/5 equals 2 and 4/5. So 4 2/5 minus 1 3/5 equals 2 4/5. Okay, so that's the first method for subtracting fractions. Now we're going to move on to the second one. Okay, so we're using the same problem, 4 2/5 minus 1 3/5. But with this one, the second method, we're going to separate the whole numbers from the fractions. So we will say 4 minus 1 plus 2/5 minus 3/5. And that equals 3 minus 1/5, which equals 2 4/5. Now you might be wondering how I got that. So let's look up here. 2/5 minus 3/5. 2 minus 3 would give you a -1, right? So 2/5 minus 3/5 would give you a -1/5. That's where this minus sign comes in. So 4 minus 1 is 3, minus 1/5, that's from here, equals 2 4/5. Okay, so not surprisingly, our answer is the same as the last problem. We've just solved it in a different way. So for the third method, we're going to be separating the first whole number from the fraction. So that would be looking like this: 4 minus 1 3/5 plus 2/5 equals 3 minus 3/5 plus 2/5 equals 2 4/5. How did we get that? So 3 minus 3/5 would be 2 2/5 plus 2/5 equals 2 4/5. Okay, let's look at the fourth method. This one is taking 1 from the first whole number and trading it for a fraction equal to 1. So 4 2/5 would become 3 5/5. So you see that this whole thing here does equal 4, right? 3 5/5 plus 2/5 minus 1 3/5 equals 3 7/5 minus 1 3/5, which equals 2 4/5.
All right, so I hope that that step-by-step explanation of those four methods really helped you. Now you can have your child complete the worksheet. And if your child is getting frustrated by having to use those four different methods, it's typically because they don't really understand one or more of them. So I would just slow down and walk through the problems with them, demonstrating how to do the problem using the various methods. And you can do that by asking questions. What should we do next? What do you think we should put here? That kind of a thing. And then doing that as you go will help them to understand the method better. So undoubtedly, your child will choose the favorite method. And that's okay to have a favorite method and to consistently use that method. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is good to explore different methods just in case your child hadn't thought of that and actually decided that that is now my favorite method. Okay, so please go ahead and take the time to have your child explore. All right, now you can ask the in conclusion questions and play equivalent fractions game again. All right, for lesson 91, there is a correction. So if your book was printed before April 18th of 2018, please go ahead and follow the link that I'll leave in the description to find out what those corrections are. The warm-ups are on worksheet 73, and after you check those answers, have your child use the multiplication table to find the equivalent fraction and answer the question, what is 1/2 plus 1/4? Now, intuitively, since they've been working with fractions for a while, they probably already know the answer, but we want them to use the multiplication table to find the answer. So let's take a look at that.
Okay, so if we have 1/2 plus 1/4, we need to find an equivalent fraction for 1/2 that involves fourths. So the way we do that is we look at the 1 and 2. Here's our 1/2. And we move over until the denominator is a 4. So that's right away. So the equivalent fraction for 1/2 in the fourths is 2/4. And 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Here we have 1/2 plus 1/3. How can we find the common denominator? So if we look at the 2's row, because we have 1/2, and we look at the 3's row, because we have 1/3, we need to look across and see what common denominators they have. Well, they share the 6's, they share the 12's, and they share the 18's. Using the lowest common denominator is often easiest because you rarely have to simplify after that. So we're going to start with the 6's. Okay, so our common denominator is going to be 6. So I can put something over 6 plus something over 6. Okay, and what is that something? Well, now we have to look to see where 1/2 has the denominator of 6. So the equivalent fraction to 1/2 is 3/6. We can write that there. Now, where does 1/3 have the denominator of 6? Right here. So the equivalent fraction of 1/3 is 2/6. So then we can say, what is 3 plus 2? That's 5. So my answer is 5/6. Okay, another way to find a common multiple is to start with the larger number and name its multiples until the multiple of the smaller number is named. So for example, if we have the two numbers 6 and 8, I'm going to list off the 8's, okay, the multiples of 8. And just as a side note, when you're doing these 8's, it's very easy to come up with the second row because you're just adding 40 to the top row. So the next number is 48, 56, 64, 72, 80. Okay. All right. So let's look at the 8's. And as I read them, I'm going to check to see if 6 is a multiple. So is 6 a multiple of 8? No. Is 6 a multiple of 16? No. Is 6 a multiple of 24? Yes, it is a multiple of 24. How many times does 6 go into 24? The answer is 4. I'm just going to put it up here in this circle. How many times does 8 go into 24? 3 times. So in this lesson, we're not using this method to find the common denominator. We're just kind of introducing the idea, and in the next lesson, we will use this method.
So after that, have your child complete the worksheet and then ask the in conclusion questions and play fraction addition game, which is F31 in the Math Card Games book. In lesson 92, we're going to be finding common denominators and adding fractions with unlike denominators. The warm-up is on practice sheet 8. And the second method that we just discussed of finding multiples is going to be expanded upon in this lesson. Let's take a look at how that works.
Okay, so we're going to start off with this equation, 3/8 plus 1/6 equals. So let's look at the multiplication table and see how we can use this. So here are the 8's. Remember, for the last lesson, I said you find the multiples for the larger number. So here's the multiples for the 8's, and you compare it to the 6's. So is 6 a multiple of 8? No. 16? No. 24? Yes. Here's the 24. So we're going to write this as some number over 24 plus another number over 24. Then what can we do? In order to find the equivalent fraction, remember the problem was 3/8. So we find 3/8 and we move over to where the 8 becomes a 24. And so now my equivalent fraction is 9/24. So I can go ahead and write that. And then we do the same for the 6. Here's 1 and 6. Move over until the 6 becomes a 24. What's our numerator? It's a 4. So the equivalent fraction for 1/6 is 4/24. Okay, and then we can just add like normal. 9 plus 4 is 13, 24ths. I forgot to mention that you might be interested in removing the appendix from your lesson book and either laminating it or putting it into a plastic protective cover so that you can use a whiteboard marker on there and circle the numbers that you want to talk about, circle the common denominator, whatever. This one doesn't happen to be in a plastic cover or laminated, but you're free to do that if you want to just go ahead and do that for your own child.
There's no worksheet today, but you will play the game Fraction Addition, which is F31 in the Math Card Games book. And then you can ask the in-conclusion questions either before or after the game. It doesn't matter. And that's all for this week. I hope you have a good one. Thanks for joining me. See you next time. Bye-bye.